Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about the client who's saying they don't need to go to IOP. Now, the implication here is that we're talking about when IOP is being recommended as part of a discharge plan following residential treatment. I'll talk about clients who start out in IOP in a second here, but for right now, we're going to be talking about residential treatment clients. And so as far as how to respond on this one, this is actually a pretty easy one because all you really need to say is, what's the treatment team's recommendation? Because in my experience, the typical way this ends up becoming a crack in the client's foundation boils down to communication problems. Remember in Module 1 where we talked about that bad game of telephone? Well, picture in this case, the counselor's telling the client what the discharge recommendations are, and then the client translates that information to the family. And somewhere in there, it's not out of the question to imagine that that message could possibly get a little garbled. As in, yeah, they said something about IOP, but that I didn't really have to do it if I don't want to. So you can see how this is one where it's going to be really valuable to make sure everybody's on the same page as far as discharge planning. So depending on your client's age and your relationship with them, you'll want to see where you fit with regard to being in on any of those discussions about discharge planning, both for you to be informed as well as for you to be able to provide any kind of information to the treatment team that could be pertinent to discharge recommendations. So the main thing our review material here is going to focus on is the importance of following through with the professional continuum of care. And it's going to be important to remember that one of the primary reasons for treatment failure is premature withdrawal from the treatment process. That's quitting before you're done. And in the client's mind, it's really easy to dismiss the importance of that secondary phase of treatment relative to the primary phase of treatment. But as an educated consumer, you're going to keep in the forefront of your mind that discharge does not mean that treatment's over, and that IOP is a really logical next step in the treatment process for someone coming from residential treatment. Now, that's not to say that depending on certain factors, there might be some cases where IOP isn't recommended. The important point to remember here is the significance of continuing with professional care. Now, in the case where the client does start out in IOP, that would be the primary phase of treatment. So you're going to have to be thinking in terms of what would the secondary phase of treatment be going from there. So the question would be, does the IOP include any kind of aftercare program or some way to remain connected through an alumni group or some type of related activities? And then that's also where a step down into just outpatient counseling once or twice a week with an individual counselor might be the next logical step. So what we're going to do here is look at some of the material from Module 3 that talks about the importance of the outpatient phase of care.